It's late. Your house is quiet. The street is empty. Then there's a knock on the door. Not loud, not urgent, polite. You weren't expecting anyone, but when you look through the glass, you see children standing there. They don't look scared. They don't look upset. They just stand very still. One of them looks at you and says, "Can we come in?" And in that moment, before you've even looked at their faces, your body reacts. Your stomach drops, your chest tightens, every instinct inside you says no. Not because they're hesitating, but something about them feels wrong. Now imagine that exact moment has been described by hundreds of people in different countries over decades by people that you have never met, and they all say the same thing. Whatever they were, they needed permission to come inside. Tonight we are talking about the black-eyed children, a modern paranormal phenomenon that doesn't chase, doesn't shout, doesn't break in, it waits. And if you've heard of that before, that's okay. I hadn't either. Let's walk through this together. Welcome back to Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. Before we do go any further, I just want to say this clearly. The episode isn't here to frighten you, and it isn't here to convince you of anything. When I first came across this phenomenon, I didn't dive into this confidently. I hesitated because it's something of an old legend. It's something that's safely buried in history. But these accounts are recent and told by people who weren't looking for attention. So tonight we're not going to be sensationalising. We're going to be taking it slowly. Look where it started, listen to the people that experience it, and sit with the confusion and the question that refuses to go away. Why do these stories all sound the same? And why do they always involve being invited inside? Welcome back. Episode 5 of Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. We're circling back round to paranormal today. This story is a little bit strange. It's a little bit weird. I've heard of children knocking on doors. Well, that's not really very paranormal, can we? But no, like I've heard of people, children knocking on doors that are asking to be invited inside and all kinds of weird shit like that. But this is something that's quite terrifying. So it began in 1996. So we're going to go all the way back to 1996, which was like 5 years ago. So don't worry about it. But yeah, let's dive in. Let's have a look. It is going to be a little bit weird. So again, if you are scared of things like that, if you are living on your own, I wouldn't recommend. No, I would definitely recommend. You'll shit yourselves. But yeah, let's jump into Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. This episode is Don't Let Them In, the Black-Eyed Children. Unsettling. It's not graphic. It's nothing like awful happens to these children or anything like that. But you might find the subject a little bit disturbing. And obviously this is Christmas Eve that this is coming out. So I want to say that this happened on Christmas and that's it, but I'd be lying. But yeah, Merry Christmas. I'll try and make it a bit Christmassy. I know some of it circles to Christmas, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, let's jump in. Oh, again, thank you for listening last week to the Chris Watts case. I had a few people message me about that I hadn't actually heard of it, so that was quite cool. Again, if you want to talk to me, message me on Instagram. I've had a few people comment on there, which is great. Email is bloodonthebalcony@gmail.com. Personal email's fine as well. Sorry, personal Instagram's fine as well. Whatever you're comfortable with. Share your stories. If you've heard of the black-eyed children, or if you have encountered the black-eyed children, that would be incredible to hear your story. But yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so I want you to imagine something ordinary. It's late, your house is quiet, outside the street is empty and that winter way. There's no cars, no voices, no movement. So you're chilling. You've got your Netflix on, or I don't know why I mentioned Netflix. I hope one day I'll get sponsored by Netflix. Anyway, you got your candle lit, you're all cuddled, it's the Christmas tree in the background, that kind of vibe. And then there's a knock at the door. Now, any knock at the door to me is like, oh shit, there's a knock at the door. And even if it's like my neighbour just saying, I brought your bin back, it's still a knock at the door. But these knocks weren't loud, they weren't urgent, they weren't frightening, they were just polite knocks at the door. Now I've got a Ring camera because I am so down with the kids. So I'd have a look at my Ring camera. But if you haven't got one, then you can have a look out the window, or you're going to go and answer the door. So you weren't expecting anyone, but when you look through the glass, you see children standing there. They aren't crying, they aren't shivering, they aren't asking for help in the way that you would expect. They're just standing there very still, looking at you. And then very, very calmly they're saying, can we come in? They usually come in pairs, they can be on their own. But these children always come at night. And before you've even noticed their faces, you think, oh God. You know, when your stomach drops and you're like, do I answer the door to these kids, or what do I do? Like, not because they're threatening, but something about them feels wrong. You know that kind of look when somebody makes you feel really unsettled, but it's not that unsettling that one person's experienced. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like you're looking out at the window and you think, oh, I don't know. Anyway, hundreds of people have experienced these children across decades in different countries, but they all describe it exactly the same. So the same knock, the same request, and the same overwhelming instinct to refuse. So I've said tonight we're going to be talking about the black-eyed children, and it's a modern paranormal phenomenon, and it's pretty terrifying, to be fair. So the black-eyed children, often called the BEKs, are a modern paranormal phenomenon. So it's not an old legend. We're not talking back in the 1800s, you know, we're talking about time when we were alive. So we're not Victorian ghost storying it up, and it's not like medieval folklore or anything like that. The earliest well-documented reports appear in the mid-1990s. So we're talking, how many years ago is that now? 30 years ago? And the sightings of these children are still being reported today. And that alone makes people feel uncomfortable, because when you look into it, these cases are being reported from the 90s right up to now. So it's pretty unusual to have a ghost story that's not old, that's not distant, you know, not wrapped in history, you know, back in the days when you were driving around on a horse and cart. Yeah. So these aren't that kind of vibe. These are not long ago. So, yeah. And the people that are reporting these sightings are fairly consistent. So the children are roughly between 6 and 16 years old, often, again, appearing in pairs, always at night, and always asking permission to enter a space. And then there are the eyes. Witnesses describe these eyes as completely black eyes. There's no whites, no pupils, no reflection, no visible emotion, not glowing, just empty black eyes. So I'm instantly thinking the devil or something, you know. And the permission thing is vampires, isn't it? You know, you have to ask to come in. So, but almost everyone says the same thing. They didn't notice the eyes at first. They just felt like something was wrong. So the fear didn't actually come from what they look like. It came from how these children are making people feel. So let's hit back to the journalist who started it all. So the black-eyed children phenomenon begins with a journalist named Brian Bethel. And because Brian wasn't a paranormal investigator, and he wasn't out there searching for stories, and he wasn't primed to believe anything unusual, it's 1996. He's sitting alone in his car late at night, parked outside a cinema in Texas, and he's writing a check. A normal, completely boring moment. So let's just remove the drama from the situation. You know, you're sitting in your car, you're not expecting anything to happen. It's not like he's been set up or anything like that. It's removed the drama. He notices that two boys were approaching his car. He said they looked around 10 to 12 years old, so, you know, not big kids. But they did knock on his window. Now, that didn't really alarm him at first, but he did say that something felt off immediately. But they didn't act like children, so they weren't fidgeting, they weren't excited, they weren't running around, they didn't look around. They just knocked on the window and then stood very, very still. And then one of them spoke to Brian, and he said his voice was calm, polite, it was almost rehearsed. He asked Brian for a ride home to get money for some movie tickets. And then Brian later said that something strange happened in that moment. He said he felt a sudden, powerful urge to unlock the door. And that frightened him, because it was like he didn't feel like he'd made that decision. It was like it was an impulse to open the door for them. And then he says he looked directly at their eyes and their faces, and he said he saw them and they were completely black. He said he described the fear as an instant and physical fear. He was terrified. He said his body recognised the danger before his mind could process it, so he started the car and he drove away. When he looked back in the mirror, the boys were gone. So they completely just disappeared. He said he looked around, they weren't walking, they weren't running, they were just gone. So he didn't immediately go to the police or anything like that, because why would you? No crime's really been committed, has it? You know, you two little weirdos knock on your door. I say little weirdos, that's not very nice, but love you, black-eyed children. He talked about it privately, and he tried to try and process it, try and process what had happened. I think adrenaline would have kicked in when he started to drive away, especially if your body's like being taken over by your own fear or whatever you want to describe it as. But then when he started talking to people, he said that people started telling him almost identical stories. So this happened to Brian in his car, which I didn't mention earlier on. I honestly, like, I'm learning as I go along here with you. Brian happened to have this happen to him. Happened to have this happen. Is that even a sentence? You know what I mean. In his car when he's writing a check, not expecting anything unusual. So there must have been other people around for him to be sat in his car writing a check. But then, as I say, people started telling almost identical stories. So many of the black-eyed children encounters are happening at front doors late at night, and they're often in winter. So this is how it circles round to Christmas, you know, those cold nights. Anyway, late at night, often in winter. People describe them, this is still in the air, the porch lights are casting the long shadows, the streets are quiet. I'm imagining my driveway. So, you know, that can be quite... I've got a longer driveway than normal, I would say. So to imagine two children walking down my drive with two eyes that are black, they've not been punched. I'm not quite sure what I would do. I think I'd be a bit scared. Well, I don't think I would be scared. I'd be absolutely shitting my whacker. So, they open the door and see children standing outside in the light, sometimes two, sometimes one, and they always ask to come in, to use the phone, to wait for the parents, to get warm, can I have some money? It's always the same story. Their voices are all described the same, so it's a polite, flat, emotionless, but unnatural voice. Witnesses have also said that the children don't blink and they don't shift their weight. They don't react emotionally when refused, and then their eyes are noticed, and that's when the fear hits. So normal 10, well, I don't know why a six-year-old would be walking around the streets in the dark on their own anyway, to be perfectly honest with you, but that's my opinion, that's my parenting, I'm not judging. Well, yeah, I am, but don't let your 6-year-old, if they've got black eyes, knock on my door. I mean, everybody's seen a kid, you know, they don't stand still very often. They are quite active creatures, so to speak. So you would think that this was quite unusual to start with, wouldn't you? So, and then afterwards, they didn't realise it, but people would slam the door without thinking, and they would be shaking. One woman, she didn't say who her name was. She stood the other side of the door and cried. not from fear, but from this overwhelming emotion. And then she said she was so confused. Her instinct told her that she'd done the right thing, but she didn't know why she'd done the right thing, which to me is weird, because if it was a kid, I think natural instinct, especially as a woman, and men get natural instinct toward children to protect them, to take care of them, to find out what's going wrong. So for her to slam the door on these children, then to look and then be gone, I think that would be quite an overwhelming feeling anyway, because you think, I want to help these kids. Like, why are they at my door? Why are they walking around the streets at night on their own without their parents asking to come in? There are other car window encounters as well that have been reported. So it wasn't just, your front door. Brian, one of the most famous witnesses, it happened to him in his car. But it often happens to parked vehicles or in traffic lights or quiet roads. It'd be interesting actually to see, if I was going to dive a little bit deeper, to see if other people saw them when people reported them turning up at their car windows and things like that, because you would think if you were in a car, other people would see it too. So witnesses that did actually have it happen to them when they were in cars and things like that, they described that when the children would knock on the glass, usually would be when the car is parked, or they're stuck at traffic lights or on quiet roads. I remember actually, this is completely irrelevant, it's going off point, but it was a friend of mine that had just passed her driving test, and she got stopped at some traffic lights in the middle of nowhere in like the absolute dead of night on the way back from, I think it was from a boyfriend's house. And I remember she stopped at these traffic lights and somebody tried to get into her car. So obviously, quick thinking, she had to pull off and go through the red light. But yeah, I can imagine it's pretty terrifying if it's just a normal person that's in the road. And actually, I was driving with a friend of mine as well. I've had a few, I'd say paranormal encounters, but it was really strange because we were driving through a country road, and there was something in the middle of the road, and both of us looked at each other and we were like, is that a person in the middle of the road? But he was going too fast because it's 60 on the country lanes around here, and he tried to slow down and stop because we thought it was a person, but we hit them, but we didn't hit anything, and we turned around and it had gone, and we were both absolutely terrified. We just looked at each other and we were just like, what the hell was that? It was horrendously bad. So yeah, these children would knock on the glass, and witnesses and ask for a ride, and then these witnesses said they felt trapped. The locks started to click on their own, engines were stalling and radios were cutting out. One driver in particular said she couldn't move, not physically but mentally, until the children had stepped back. So it was as if they'd got a power over a brain, is that the right, like over her and what she was doing. But as soon as they stepped back slightly after she'd refused, they were gone. There was no footprints in the snow, and that detail appears again and again. Now, to me, I say that a lot, don't I? To me, see, I'm like a chuckle brother. There's stories. These stories take a deeper unease across cultures and history. Many entities share one rule: you cannot enter unless you're invited. Now, that's the rule for vampires. I don't know if anyone's seen the Vampire Diaries. Spirits, demons, and trickster beings. So all of those entities and paranormal energies have to be invited in. So a vampire, before they can cross the threshold into a house, they have to speak to the homeowner. It's the same with spirits, demons, and trickster beings. So in particular, these children needed to be invited in. So they didn't break this paranormal rule. They would wait, they would ask patiently, and they would rely on, which is really quite sad, guilt, kindness, and hesitation of the people that they were victimizing. Is that? Yeah, I'll take victimizing. So that's why these stories don't feel violent. They just feel manipulative, because they're these forms, these energy forms, are, if they are energy forms and not real children, then they are preying on the kindness of people to allow them into their lives. Now, the reason why I chose this around Christmas time is because at Christmas time, it's a time where we will open doors to strangers, and we do help children instinctively. We do feel guilty saying no, and we tend to soften our boundaries. So if we do open the doors to strangers, it's more inclined to happen at Christmas, which is really interesting actually, because I watched something about letting strangers in on Amazon Prime. They can sponsor me too. And it was about midnight, and a family were having a party, and a Santa Claus knocked on the door. Now, they didn't even think twice about it. They just let this Santa Claus in, and he shot them all and then burnt the house down. So because it was Santa Claus and he was dressed as somebody that you would trust or that you would let into your house, they let them in and they didn't even hesitate. I mean, I would be a little bit different because I'm on my own at home this Christmas, so I would be thinking, maybe I'm not going to let that person in. When I say on my own, I'm not on my own. I've got my family here, but you know what I mean? I wouldn't think about letting an adult Santa into my house, but you don't know, because it's Christmas, you're a bit merry, you've had a drink. Carolers knock, neighbours visit unexpectedly. My neighbour's a bit funny. I could imagine him dressing as Santa Claus and knocking, not a bit funny as in the head, but a bit funny as like he likes to laugh. So, the children are just associated instantly with innocence, aren't they? These children aren't going to do anything, they're kids. But that's what you would think. But the black-eyed children exploit exactly that. They don't break in, they knock, they ask. And Christmas is definitely a time when we hesitate, and that the hesitation is then the danger. So, interestingly, I did a little bit of bit more digging on this and about what actually happened when you do let them in. Because obviously, some people might actually let them in. Even though they get this overwhelming feeling of not wanting to let them in or not wanting to engage with them, there are some accounts which, before I recorded this, if I'm completely honest with you, I didn't think about. It just came to me as I was recording. So I'm reading this for the first time with you guys. So did anyone actually let them in? There are very few accounts where people say they allowed the black-eyed children inside. I keep wanting to say the black-eyed peas and having to stop myself. So if I do say black-eyed peas, I do mean the black-eyed children. Like, they're not letting will.i.am in the house. So if he knocked on my door, I might let him in. So yeah, it was very rare. There's not many encounters where they do let them in because they get this overwhelming feeling of not wanting them to be in the house. But there are a handful of people that do let them in, and then they describe the aftermath. So it's not like a big dramatic, come in, let's have a lovely time. It's one of three things. So the children are suddenly gone. So once they've said yes and they've invited them in, they go. They turn away briefly, look back, and the children have gone. There's no sound, no movement, no explanation. They're just gone. Now, that is terrifying, because if you've invited an entity into your house, they might not want to come in right away. They may go away, do some planning. I don't know. I'm not a ghost. If they are ghosts, I keep saying that. I don't know what they are. But if they've been invited in, then they can keep coming in, and they can come in whenever they want. So if you open that door that one time to any of these kind of entities, that is it. It's crazy. So one man said he invited them into his living room, went to get a drink of water, and when he turned back, the room was empty. There was no doors opening, no footsteps. There was no inkling that these children had left. He'd let them in, he'd sat them down, said, I'm going to get you a drink, and they were gone, just absent, just completely gone. No idea where they'd gone. The most unsettling version was that nothing happened at first. So they would let them in, they sat quietly, they would talk to them, but not have like an animated conversation. The children would sit quietly, didn't really speak much. They would answer yes and no, and very sort of withdrawn, which if you've invited some strange children into your house, you know, you're a stranger as well, aren't you? So they're not going to, a lot of children wouldn't engage in conversation unless they had a particular confidence about themselves. So they didn't speak much, they didn't move naturally, and then they left. There was no incident, no confrontation, just a bit weird. The kids came in and then went. But then in the days and weeks after they'd been in, things then began to change. So this is where the accounts become more consistent again. So people describe intense nightmares, which, let's be honest, if two kids with black eyes had knocked on my door, I don't think I'd be sleeping very well at night, especially if they'd just come in, had a drink of water and fucked off. Do you know what I mean? And then there's sleep paralysis, which I've experienced a couple of times, where I can't move and I can see myself, or I'm in a dream and I can't get out of it. They are awful. Then there's also shadows in their peripheral vision, so always feeling like there's somebody there, noticing somebody and then them disappearing. But again, they've invited them in, so they could be there. Feeling watched, again, invite them in, come whenever they want. Sudden illness or exhaustion, and then emotional numbness. Now, emotional numbness for me is a massive one. I have had experiences with people that have become emotionally numb when they've had encounters with spirits, or they've had encounters with they've said they've had encounters with spirits or the devil or anything like that, and they described a feeling of having like a pain in their shoulder, like they were carrying something that was really heavy, and then they would sort of, you know, just shut down totally, not engaged with their partner, not engaged with their kids, not engaged how they normally would. They would just go completely blank behind the eyes, and that is horrible. That's a horrible situation to be in, as the person and as the person that's, you know, on the receiving end of it as well. So whether or not they've, you know, I don't want to say possessed, but they've made these people feel a type of way after they've let them into the house. So weird, very weird, but it's not immediate. It's not like you immediately shut down and turn into, you know, not a robot, but, you know, somebody that's not quite engaged in their emotions like they would be. It's a gradual thing, so it happens over time. But whatever they are, whatever they were, they didn't need to stay long. They just needed to get that invitation to get in the house. Now, some of them just needed the invitation and left. Some of them came in and spent a little bit of time and left. I'm actually looking into the living room now in my house and I'm thinking, oh my God, if them kids were like sitting on my sofa right now after they'd knocked on my door, I would be shitting myself. But I'm not going to let any kids in with black eyes. I'm not going to let any random kids in my house, let's be honest. I'm not doing that. Not after this story anyway. But another one said that they felt like something had learned the layout of the house. So they were catching these visions, these, I don't know, peripheral vision of these people, but they knew, it was as if these entities knew where they were going then. So they'd come in, sat down, scoped the place out and then gone. So there are fewer accounts of people saying yes, come in, or people letting them in the cars and things like that, because the instinct is to refuse is overwhelming. It's as if your gut kicks in and you don't want them there. People don't often realise why they're afraid, only that they are. So it's not like a big guy or a scary woman turn up at your door. It's kids. So like, why are you going to be afraid of 2 6-year-olds or 2 16-year-olds, you know? So it reminds me of that movie The Strangers, when they all turn up in masks and stuff, or what's that one where they get to kill someone for The Purge, like, you know, where they turn up at the door and they're like looking in the cameras and shit like that. Oh my God, it's terrifying. I actually refused for so long not to have a Ring camera because I was terrified that I'd be constantly watching to make sure that there was nobody around my house. But it's not as bad as that. It's like you can, if they detect movement, it comes up, which is sometimes quite scary, but then at the same time it's okay. I should have given in. So I apologise to Ring, because they're really bothered about my 50 quid. Anyway, people don't talk about it as much. They don't post videos, they don't dramatise, and they often say that they don't want the attention, which I get. I wouldn't want the attention if somebody had 2 kids had come around my house. I'm not talking about that. So I think what makes the story worse is that the children aren't aggressive, violent or dramatic. That would be a lie, because they're not scary. They're polite, they wait patiently, they leave when they're refused in, off they go to the next victim. And that's their rules. They have set rules, and the rules imply intention. So if you are refused a house, move on. So like I say, it's an instinct for kindness around this time of year. They were children, it was cold, it was Christmas, it's not horror, they're not banging on the door, they're not demanding to be let in. It's just really strange. It's just a really strange story that doesn't really go anywhere. So it's like they knock on the door, they go, or they knock on the door, they come in and they go, and then all these weird things start happening, which is, it's crazy really. And I think that if we looked into it in like real detail, we could probably find a lot of witness statements and a lot of these people, because I think the last case was not so long ago, so it's not like it's been years and years since this happened. But yeah, it's quite scary really. So I think what we need to think about as well, whilst we're talking about this, is when we do open doors to other realms, if you like, talking about it and researching it and discussing it and then recording the podcast, listening to podcasts, that does not invite anything in. It doesn't summon anything, so we've not got to worry about that. It doesn't open any doors or anything like that to another realm. It's just a story. We're not participating. I don't want to say I don't believe it. I also don't want to say I do. I'm going to say I'd like the kids to knock on my door, but at the same time I absolutely would not. So I don't know why I'm trying to be brave Betty there. Who's brave Betty? Anyway. So yeah, it's very strange. It's very weird. It's very unexplained. It's something that's worth discussing. If you've had any encounters with them, let me know. Do you know what I mean? Let me know if you know anyone that's had any encounters with them. They are going to be stories that you will remember. It's quite scary this time of year anyway. The nights are drawing in at 4 o'clock, so it might be that it's not midnight when they knock, it's the middle of the day at 4 o'clock. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode anyway. Just remember, if you hear a knock late at night and something inside you says no, that doesn't make you cruel, it makes you human, it makes you sensible. These stories don't prey on fear, so you hear the stories about the devil, I say the devil, but these dark entities that feed on fear, and poltergeists and things like that are very prominent in teenage girls and their hormones and things like that. And then if you're scared, then you throw that fear out into the atmosphere. I did actually have a very good bit of advice from somebody that was saying, if you go down to the basement and you're scared of something, be scarier, and that will scare them off. So that's a good bit of advice. Maybe do some weird googly eyes at them or something. No, don't, I'm only kidding. Black-eyed kids, not the black-eyed fucking peas. So yeah, let's discuss it. Send me an email, send me an Instagram, whatever you want to do. Reach out to me if you've heard any of these stories. That'd be amazing. If there's anything else you want me to look into, that'd be great. There was somebody that reached out to me about the Lucy Letby case, and they've given me some homework. They've given me some things to look at, and how my opinion may change, or it might add a layer to that. So we may revisit that if that's something you'd be interested in. But yeah, like I say, this has been Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. We've got to the end of episode 5. I hope everybody has an amazing Christmas. Remember, enjoy yourselves. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. I don't know why I said that. But yeah, have a great Christmas, and I will see you in the new year. If it is the new year when I'll see you, is it next Tuesday? No, see you next Tuesday. I don't know, it'll still be the end of December, won't it? We won't quite have made it to New Year yet, I don't think. So yeah, we've got 2 more episodes this year, this one and then the next one. I don't know why I'm saying this, but yeah, have a great Christmas, stay safe, don't answer the door to any children that you don't know unless they are like hurt or something. Now you judge, I'm not going to say don't do it, because obviously if they die, then I don't want it on me. Merry Christmas, and I will see you next week. Next week we are going UFO spotting, aren't we? Yes, UFO next week. So if anyone's got any UFO stories, send them in. Looks Like Blood on the Balcony is my Instagram. bloodonthebalcony@gmail.com is my email address. And yeah, have an amazing Christmas. Thank you again for listening. And I will see you all soon.